Hi guys, and welcome back to another fly fishing video. If you've just watched the Scottish series, I hope you enjoyed it. I've now come to Llyn Clewedog, Wales's premier trout fishery. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a boat today, so what I've decided to do is a review of the A.Jensen Drifter 2 fly rod. It's a 10 foot for a 7, so without further ado, let's get into it. Well, I've come in off the platform. It's a bit windy. In fact, it's funny, we're in Wales. 1 minute it's windy, the next minute it's a flat cam, but welcome to British weather. So, I've got the rod tube here in front of me, and the first thing I would say about the Cordura tube, I like a Cordura tube with my rods, is the rod comes in a sock, which is somewhat unusual nowadays. A lot of the tubes have compartments inside that contain the sections of the rod. It's a 4-piece rod, but this comes with a sock. What I like about the tube is it's triangular in shape, so when I put it down on a flat surface, such as a boat, it won't roll round like the normal circular tubes. So that's a big plus in my humble opinion so far. Well, let's take the rod out of the tube and have a look, shall we? So, as I said, it comes in a little sock here, and pretty standard. 4-piece rods is probably the rods of choice nowadays, and certainly, as the name suggests, Drifter 2, it's designed primarily from fishing from a drifting boat. So let's get all the parts out and have a little look. Now, I've had the rod out the tube already, and that was to remove the plastic protection that goes round the cork, and I'll confess that I did put the rod together when it first arrived at the house, and my initial thought, it's quite stiff, so that might change as we go through the review process. So what am I going to do to get a feel for the rod? Well, I'm going to put it together for a kick-off, and I'm going to put a number of lines through it. As I said, it's a 7-weight. I've brought along 7-weight lines, 6-weight lines and 8-weight lines. Now I've got floaters, intermediate lines and fast sinkers, and we'll just see which performs well. For a competition angler, and I still do the very odd competition, you want a rod that's going to be able to do all things. Got to go from dry fly to fishing really fast sinking lines, and if it can do that, it'll get a big tick in the box from me. A friend of mine who used to be in the industry tells me that you cannot buy a bad fishing rod nowadays, and that's probably quite true. Technology has moved on to such an extent that most of what you get is very good quality, regardless of the price. So you can pay anything from £50 all the way up to over £1,000 for a fly fishing rod nowadays. Is there any need to do that? I always put it to the same as cars. You can drive to the shops in a Mini, or you can drive to the shops in a Bentley. It's purely up to yourself. You know, if you want to have a Bentley, you save up, you buy one. It's your money, you spend it how you will. This rod's coming in, I think it's around £300. A.Jensen, you might not have heard of this company before. So they're based in Denmark, and Scandinavia is linked with quality. So I'm expecting great things from the rod itself. And as I look at the fittings, they've got all the little niceties. So they've got the logo on the ring that holds in your reel. There's 2 locking rings, which seem to move freely up and down the screw handle. It comes with a fighting butt. I don't believe it's removable. It's not moving. The cork, I believe it's Portuguese cork, looks immaculate. You can't say that for all rods nowadays. The cork looks really good quality. As for the size of the handle, I've got quite small hands, and that seems to fit quite nicely in my hand. But I'll know once I've been casting with it for a while whether it's right. Now, the other thing I noticed immediately, because I've been using Helios's for a few years now, is this rod has a keeper ring, and that's a thing that's missing, sadly, from a lot of quite high-end rods. There isn't a keeper ring anymore, and it all comes down to manufacturing costs, of course. If you lose the keeper ring, you save a few pennies, and if you're producing a lot of rods for sale, that's going to save you some money as a distributor and manufacturer. Finish is quite nice. It's got the logo on the blank, Drifter 2, and it tells you the length and the weight of line that it's designed to take. As with most rods nowadays, certainly the rods I've reviewed recently, they've got a small dot, which I assume marries up to another dot. It isn't a dot actually, so on the sprocket, which I think is quite a good thing, it's got 10 foot for a 7, and that'll line up with a dot I expect. So we'll put them 2 pieces together, And then let's have a look at the other two parts. So it's got two running guides, and then the remainder of the guides are snake rings, which again, it's pretty standard for rods that I've used in the past, even quite high-end rods. So I've put that together, and I'm now going to stick the last piece in of the puzzle, and there we go. So I put the rod together. It's feels quite light. Most modern rods now are going to feel light, whether you've spent £1,000 or £50. It's a very light item. Once I've put a reel on, again, I'll get a better feel for it. So, what kind of action is it? The way to tell what kind of action you've got on a rod is if you grab it at the tip and you bend it, and it starts to bend through to the middle here of the rod, what you've got is a medium fast rod. If it bends all the way to the butt here, what you've got is a slow action rod. So what does that mean? It can be quite confusing, especially if you're new to the sport and you're just buying a fishing rod. So fast action, medium action, slow action, which is the best? Here's my take on it. I'm no expert, but I've done a lot of fishing in the past. And what I would say to you, the advantages of a fast rod is it loads line quicker, which means it recovers quicker, and you can lift line off the water quicker. So what? What does that mean? Well, if you're out, for example, you're out in a drifting boat and you see a fish rise to your left, you might have 20 feet, 30 feet of line, a fast action rod will be able to lift that line off the water and you can redirect your cast to cover the fish. With a slower action rod, that might be a bit more difficult. Another advantage of a fast action rod is it will be able to cope with the faster sinking lines. So lines like the DI9 Compact, the DI8, heavier lines, it will be able to cope with them much better and you'll be able to get good distance with a fast action rod. Now, I'm not saying that a medium fast or a medium slow action rod wouldn't be able to do the same job, but it would take a lot more skill. I'm going to head up and tackle the rod up, and we're going to start with a floating line. Well, I've got myself set up. Initially, I'm starting with a floating line. I've got a couple of cockybundy on, as there's been reports that these are now coming off in droves. So if there's any fish in the margins, hopefully I might pick up a fish as well. Although I haven't brought a landing net, so that could be problematic. So I'm going to start with the floater. It's an 8-weight. I've got a DI9 Compact to change through to, and I've got a DI3 which I'll try as well, just to see how the rod performs like that. But at the moment, we're going to have a look and see how we get on with the floater. Now, if you're interested at all, the floater is an airflow line. It's the universal taper. I'll not take too much off the spool initially. I just want to get a feel for the rod itself. It does feel a little stiff to me, but I am used to I've just had a fish rise to my cockybundy immediately, actually, just in at the margins there. I've not cast 20 feet and I've had a fish come up and have a go at my flies. Brilliant. But that just speaks to the quality of the Clewedog fishery. I know Gareth and Russ have put an awful lot of effort into this, and it's now become so popular that I can't even get a boat on a Friday, which is bizarre, but there you go, that's what it's like. But still, if I'd been in a boat, I'd probably be more wanting to do some fishing than I am wanting to do to test this rod. So I put about 20 foot of line out. I mean, it's like no problem at all. Lifting line off, the recovery's great. I'm straight back out, brilliant. You know, so if a fish rose to my left, I'd be able to lift off and quickly cast across the wind to target that fish, which is great. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're a competition angler, that's really important. Recovery is really important. Now, if I'd been fishing properly here, I'd have been tackling this from much further up the bank. I think as the wind's blowing in to the side here, most of the food items will be getting blown in here as well. So any beetles that are on the water will be right on the margin here. So any fish that are really close in, I'm probably spooking from where I'm standing. But it's about the rod, it's about the rod. So the wind is quite blowy now and it is catching that line, pushing it to the left. But I'm going to chance taking some more line off my reel and just to see how it performs at a distance in this crosswind. Not bad. I believe there's an airflow heat on this weekend, and that's probably one of the reasons I was unable to get a boat. All the boats are booked, competition anglers are out practicing, and I dare say it'll be a fantastic event. But I primarily come up here to Clewedog because it's on my way to the River Wye, and I'm going to be fishing with my pal Sean Watkins tomorrow and Sunday. And hopefully you'll be able to see the video next week if you like that kind of thing. Oof, that wants to go like. I'm going to give it some more line. I've just got to be wary in my back casting area, but that certainly wanted to, it slammed off the back of the reel there, which is a good thing in this wind. And that's the other reason for a fast action rod. If you're trying to cast in or across the wind, in my case, a faster action rod's going to get you to where you need to be. Yeah, that's not too bad. Not too shabby at all. Llyn Clewedog, such a beautiful place. I have fished here once before, and I was lucky enough to come up with Rhys Wadley, who knows the water very well. So we had a bumper of a day. We had a little bit of a fly box competition. We each tied 10 flies each and handed it to the other, which was good fun. And if you'd like to see that video, I'll stick a little link up in the corner of the screen there. But it was great to be afloat. We had almost perfect conditions that day. It's a little windier today. Well, we've tried the floating line and it coped very well with it. I thought it might struggle a bit with the floater because it is quite a stiff rod. It feels stiff, but it seems to have coped with it no problem at all. I suppose my biggest fear would be if you were fishing dry fly and you'd come down in strength with your tippet, would you snap off on the initial strike? That would be a worry for me with this particular rod. Now, for interest, this is a DI3 expert, which pretty much means you get, it's like a DI3 head if you like, with a running line. So I expect great things from this rod just from fishing with the floater. Now sadly the wind is wheeling round and it's now almost in my face, so it'll be interesting to see how it copes with that. So here we go. This is the fast intermediate, I would call a DI3. As the name suggests, it sinks at 3 inches a second, and I'm confident it'll be very good on this rod. Yeah, I can already feel it loading up the rod and it's ready to fly. If I don't stand on the line, that is. So we'll retrieve that fairly quickly and give it another go. As I say, I think if the wind was at your back, this would just sing. Yeah, I'm already starting to really like this rod. Try and get the line back quickly enough. Oh yeah, that wants to go like all day. I'm not a particularly strong caster. My technique's very flawed. I tend to have my arms straight up, and that's from years of fishing on the engine of a boat, having to avoid my partner on the pointy end, but I cast well enough for my own needs. What I would say is, with this intermediate line, this is a weight forward 8 line, and it is absolutely singing out of the rod rings, and that's across the wind. I can only imagine what it would do with the wind at your back. As I said earlier, the rod is designed as a drifting boat rod, so I think it's going to do that job admirably. I'm just trying to get my line back before it ends up on the bottom of the reservoir. See if I can get a little bit more line off the reel here. It is quite difficult in this wind, but let's have a try. Yep, it just wants to go. I think I could probably cast the whole line if I had the wind to my back. So that's the intermediate line. Let's get that back in and we'll stick on the compact DI9. Now I do think, having put the 8 weights through this, that I'm not going to bother sticking a 6 line on this rod. It's just not going to work. I think it definitely needs the line up. So although it says 7 weight, and the series does come 6, 7 and 8, but I think that the 7 will probably handle 8 lines, no problem at all. So if you currently have an 8 weight rod and you're maybe thinking about changing, this might be worth a wee look. Oh my. That didn't take much effort at all really. And that's almost into the wind. Fantastic. Well, there we go then. That's me finished my short review of the A.Jensen Drifter 2 fly rod. 10 foot for a 7. Now, if you're in the market for a fast action rod, and that's the conclusion I've come to, this is initially when I was putting it together, I thought, oh, maybe medium fast, but having put a line above what it's rated at, I think it's definitely classed as a fast action. I went back to the floater, so I went through the 3 lines, the floater, the intermediate and the fast sinker. Now, the intermediate and the fast sinker absolutely sung out of the lines. I went back to the floater though because I wasn't quite sure about how it was delivering the flies, and I put on a couple of dries intentionally just to see how it would turn over them flies in that strong wind, and I was really impressed. It was fantastic. The line went out like a rocket and it turned the flies over no bother, even in a fairly stiff breeze here. So it's quite an impressive rod for the money, I suppose. £300 is a lot of money, but I think you're getting a fairly substantial weapon for that money. It's finished lovely, it's got nice silver trim on the blank, it's a kind of a steel grey, I suppose, is the way it's finished. It's got a nice reel seat, just functional, and it does what it says on the tin. Now, for an out and out dry fly rod, I would like to try the 6 weight and see if that's slightly different. Now, these have got full Wells handles. The model that comes in 7 and 8 have got full Wells handles. The 6 weight comes with a cigar shaped handle, so it might be a little bit more like a river rod actually than a reservoir rod, but it'd be interesting to try it. I might even get my hands on one and give that a look at. But I can thoroughly recommend the rod if you're looking for an all-rounder for boat fishing, and you want something that's not a Sage R8 at £1,000 but not Daiwa rods, then this might be a happy compromise for you. I think A.Jensen's a brand you're going to see a lot more of in the UK, so keep your eye out. Thanks for watching the review, and I'll see you all in the next one.